And good evening and welcome. I'm Charles Benson from today's TMJ4.
And I'm Shannon Sims from today's TMJ4. Tonight, the candidates for the U.S. Senate debate.
I'm Mitch Teich from WUWM. The general election is November 6th, and let's welcome the candidates to the stage. We have the current incumbent U.S. Senator and Democrat Tammy Baldwin. And her challenger, a state senator and Republican, Leah Vukmir.
Thank you both for being here. We want to go over a couple of things. For the very first time, we are streaming live on Twitter. You can follow by the hashtag that you see on the bottom of your screen, and we'll pick at least one question to ask during the debate.
And our rules are very simple tonight. Candidates have 90 seconds to respond to a question, 30 seconds to respond to any follow-up. If a candidate runs over time, you will hear this.
We are also allowing the candidates to challenge one statement from their opponent.
So let's get to the first topic. It is health care. Ms. Baldwin, you will have the first response. You have co-sponsored Senator Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All national health insurance proposal. Some studies have put this at a price tag of $32 trillion over 10 years. What will it cost taxpayers, and would it require higher payroll and/or income taxes?
Well, thank you. You know, I believe as a fundamental value that all Americans deserve affordable and quality health insurance. And the study that you cite actually shows that doing nothing would cost more. So Leah Vukmir's plans to repeal the Affordable Care Act and go back to the bad old days would actually be more costly, which is something that we have to focus on. But having just experienced last year a vote in which an effort to gut health care went down by one vote, we have some urgent issues to deal with. Costs are too high, and we do need to make sure that people with pre-existing health conditions have insurance coverage, something that is much under threat due to plans in Congress for another vote if Leah Vukmir were elected to the Senate. For the administration, it is unraveling the Affordable Care Act and threatening the affordability and, again, coverage for people with pre-existing conditions. And lastly, we have a battle in court right now, which would declare not only the Affordable Care Act unconstitutional, but it would indeed prevent or would release insurers of the obligation to cover people with pre-existing conditions. So we have some urgent, immediate issues, not something.
If I could follow up, you'll have 30 seconds to do that. I did not hear something on how you think we could pay for this Medicare for all. Is it going to require higher payroll taxes or income taxes?
You know, first of all, doing nothing would cost more, and that's deeply disturbing to me. And I do want to get to a place where all Americans have access to affordable, quality coverage. We have to figure it out one way or the other, whether we go back to the bad old days where half of all bankruptcies in America had health care crisis or injury at their root, or we continue with the Affordable Care Act and try to improve it. But we have to figure it out anyways.
Could I challenge that?
You can use your challenge, and that is the point where you have now 45 seconds to challenge that.
Okay, so Senator Baldwin, she cites the fact that her plan will cost $32 trillion. We talk about this. It wasn't just a conservative think tank, but the Urban Institute also said that it would cost $32 trillion over 10 years. And to do nothing, she says, we won't be able to do anything. I want people to understand here what happens under Senator Baldwin's plan. I'm going to call it Baldwin Care, because under her plan, the Affordable Care Act goes away. Medicare goes away. Everything that we know about insurance goes away. TRICARE for our veterans goes away. We also get rid of private insurance. So she wants to completely turn our health care over to the government and not have any ability for us to have private insurance.
We'll have to leave it there. We got a lot more on health care, though.
But I have a question for you, Ms. Vukmir. The Affordable Care Act guarantees that insurance companies must cover a number.
I'm sorry.
15-second challenge.
Ms. Baldwin, you have 15 seconds to respond.
I apologize.
Yes. After the effort to gut health care in America failed by one vote, I believe that we need to bring a lot of new ideas to the table. I support buying into Medicare at 55. I support other options, including a debate on this.
All right, we'll have more on this.
This is a topic we definitely need to talk about. I will again address you, Ms. Vukmir. The Affordable Care Act guarantees that insurance companies must cover a number of essential care benefits, including mental health, substance abuse, and maternity care. You've been vocal of repealing the ACA without a Republican bill that includes mandating insurance companies cover such benefits. What do you say to an expecting mother who is depending on that coverage to have a healthy child if Obamacare is eliminated and no bill addresses such benefits?
Who are you going to trust to solve our health care problems? A career politician who has spent her life in the halls and the walls of government, or a nurse who has spent a career taking care of patients working in hospitals? The fact of the matter is, Senator Baldwin's plan is going to gut everything. Everything. She talks about pre-existing conditions. Do you understand what happens under federal law right now? And Senator Baldwin, I don't know if it's because you are ignorant of this or if it's because you are trying to deceive people on this pre-existing condition issue. But here's the real issue. Under federal law, before Obamacare, people with pre-existing conditions were covered. They were covered under Medicare, Medicaid, and they were also covered under their private insurance through their employer. If Obamacare goes away today, guess what? People will still have coverage for pre-existing conditions. So Senator Baldwin is lying. She is lying to the people of the state. This is the big lie that is being perpetuated across the country about pre-existing conditions. Look, I would fall in front of a truck before I would let people go without coverage for pre-existing conditions. I'm a nurse. I care about my patients, and I want to make sure they get the best coverage possible. And under her plan, that won't happen. I want to allow consumerism to take hold, where we will have the variety of health care plans. Tammy Baldwin wants to put us under one plan where everything is the same, instead of giving people the options that they need.
Mayor, I'd like to follow up because the question was not directed to Ms. Baldwin, but rather to an expecting mother who would not on pre-existing but essential care benefits. And right now, there is no Republican plan or bill on the books or in Congress right now that addresses the medical care of maternity. So I'm just asking, how would you approach dealing with that subject matter on essential care benefits, maternity care specifically?
This is why you need more reinforcements in the United States Senate. The nurse is going to go in there and is going to show them what to do. What we need in health care is to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. And we agree with that because in your plan, the Affordable Care Act does go away. What we need to do is create an army of consumers with information and tools to make decisions about their health care. We have to unleash consumerism. We need information. That means transparency. We need tools, the ability to purchase our health care, and then we have the consumerism. People will have products that will be tailored to their needs.
I think we're going to stick with healthcare for another question. Ms. Baldwin, so given the changes that the Affordable Care Act has undergone in the first 2 years of the Trump administration, do you believe it's irrevocably broken, or what would you fix and how would you fix it?
It's a great question. Before I answer, I want to say that prior to the passage of the Affordable Care Act, there was not one individual insurance plan in Wisconsin that covered maternity care. That was not an option for somebody in the individual market. To your question, you know, last year in the summer, that memorable night when John McCain cast the deciding no vote to prevent gutting of health care and repeal of the Affordable Care Act, there was a moment when I hoped that our bipartisan efforts to shore it up, to fix it, because it is not perfect and it has been long neglected, would bear fruit. And I joined in on the Health Committee on which I serve with Senator Alexander, a Republican, and Senator Murray, a Democrat, to try to undo some of the sabotage that had happened through the administration, withholding a payment called cost-sharing reduction payment, and trying to make it harder for people to enroll during the open enrollment period. Those are two very important things that I would fix right away, and I would tell you that bill came out of committee on a unanimous bipartisan vote. But there are many other things. Costs are too high, and our protections for people with pre-existing conditions are threatened right now. And so with costs, I've stood up to the insurance and pharmaceutical companies to hold them accountable when they jack prices up.
Ms. Vukmir, the next question is for you. We are staying on health care. In campaign commercials, you are criticized for voting with insurance companies over patients regarding costs of oral chemotherapy versus traditional chemotherapy. Do you regret that vote, and how would you protect patients versus opposing insurance mandates?
This is a lie that's being perpetuated by Senator Baldwin. It is a scare tactic to save her job. I've got to tell you, as a nurse, I want to make sure that all patients get the best coverage possible. But also as a nurse, I problem solve, perhaps in a different way. I look at the unintended consequences of bills. And when I looked at this bill, I was very concerned that the unintended consequences of that bill would that the very people who wanted that care would be restricted from that care. You know, nurses listen. We're problem solvers. We look at things from the perspective of identifying a problem, coming up with a solution, applying that solution, and if it doesn't work, then we come back and fix it. Senator Baldwin wants to grab a headline. She wants a press release, and she just wants to protect her job. So she will do whatever she can and say whatever she can to make me look bad. But I've got to tell you, I care about my patients, and I know what is right for all patients because I have cared for patients my entire career. And that is the problem when government gets involved. Her plan for government involvement means no doctors are going to want to participate in the system when they have to participate with Medicare rates. You thought it was bad under Obamacare? Doctors being reimbursed with Medicaid rates, we will have fewer doctors, we will have more patients in a system, which means a decrease in quality care, and that is going to make it rough for any patient, especially a cancer patient, to receive the care that they deserve.
We're going to try to ask you to abide by the time. We agreed upon 90 seconds. We're also going to try to ask the audience to hold their response to any of the questions and the responses. We're going to move on from healthcare
to immigration. And that question will go to you, Ms. Vukmir. You've tweeted, quote, "Before we can discuss immigration reform, we must have control of the borders." Would you support a pathway to citizenship for Dreamers if it included funding for a border wall?
I'm glad you asked this question. I'm the daughter of Greek immigrants, so my childhood was spent watching my aunts and uncles come to this country and helping them learn to study for their naturalization and citizenship tests. So I watched them go through a process, and they were excited to become Americans. And so first and foremost, I have always said, we must build that wall. Once that wall is built, and once we have that guarantee of border security, then we can go through a process. But it is a privilege, and it is a process. We can't just grant that citizenship. It's not fair to all of those who have come before. And I want people to think about the wall from another perspective. We think about building the wall only from allowing people to come across the border, illegal immigrants. But that wall is also important from the perspective of human trafficking, drug trafficking, MS-13 gang members. This is the open border philosophy that Senator Baldwin embraces. I don't embrace that. That is why the wall is so important. The wall is important also from a public health perspective, and I look at it as a nurse from a public health perspective. People are coming across the border. We have no control over public health. I remember the days when people had to stop at Ellis Island and they were quarantined. These are the many reasons why the wall must be built first and why I support that first and foremost.
I just want to make sure I understand you clearly. So is it an all or nothing? You have to have the wall first before, because the question is, would you support a pathway for citizenship if it included funding for the wall? And is not a pathway also a process?
I think we're talking the same language, but the wall assurance, the wall has to be built first. And so far, we haven't seen members of Senator Baldwin's party or Senator Baldwin even serious about building the wall. The president made that one of his signature issues during the campaign. And when he tried to bring members of both parties together, saying, we would like to take care of DACA and take care of the wall, what did they do? Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, they walked out of the room. That isn't somebody who wants to work on an issue.
Thank you, Ms.
We need
Vukmir.
people who want to work on the issue and get it done.
All right, so Ms. Baldwin, in the Senate, you voted in 2013 for the bipartisan immigration bill that included more money for border security and a pathway to citizenship for Dreamers. Today, could you support President Trump's border wall in exchange for securing a permanent path to citizenship for the roughly 7,000 Wisconsin DACA recipients?
Thanks, Mitch. Before I answer that, I do want to use my prerogative and use a couple minutes on the last question. A vote is a vote. And Leah Vukmir voted with insurance companies to prevent oral chemo from being covered. I don't know how you can run away from the vote, but I want to get to your question on immigration. You're right. In 2013, I voted for a bipartisan bill. 68 bipartisan members voted to advance a comprehensive immigration reform bill, because I think we recognized that our immigration system is broken and it needs to be fixed. I do think it's important that we take a comprehensive approach rather than piece by piece. But the idea of a bill that includes stronger border security, a pathway to citizenship for Dreamers that stops the odious practice of snatching babies from their mothers is really important. What I would suggest also on the wall is that we should use the smartest border security possible. And many people say that that is not a wall, but rather smart technology. And the president seems to just want a wall. But you asked also specifically, would I give him a wall if it meant a pathway to citizenship? We offered that to President Trump. He couldn't take yes for an answer.
All right, thank you. I just want to clarify, Ms. Baldwin, you did not use your challenge there at that time?
No, I just used part of my
That's right.
30 seconds to deal with the
next question.
previous question.
Yeah, Ms. Vukmir, the next question to you. Homeland Security wants to include 15 factors in determining what disqualifies an immigrant for a green card or temporary visa. Some of those factors would be not having adequate education and job skills or not speaking English. This would change decades of precedent. Do you agree or disagree with those changes?
I support a merit-based system. And I think that's what people all across this country want. I've been traveling all over the state of Wisconsin. People are frustrated with the number of people who are coming across the border. And it's just a constant chain of people, and there is no accountability. We have no accounting of the actual number of people that are coming here. And I think that it is fair for us to look at a merit-based system moving forward. That's exactly what the people want. You know, it's a different time than when the early waves of immigrants came into this country. And we have to be thinking about immigrants as they're coming into this country and what are the job needs, what are the requirements, what are the different industries that each state has. And I think it's absolutely fair that we have a merit base. But I do want to ask Senator Baldwin, or at least inquire to all of you. You know, I find it interesting that Senator Baldwin is concerned about mothers and children being separated from their parents. You know, I am concerned about that too. It was awful. It's awful to see that. But this was going on during the Obama administration, and you did absolutely nothing about it then, but now you're saying it is outrageous, Senator Baldwin. This is another example of Senator Baldwin constantly saying one thing when she's in Washington and another thing when she comes home. It is outrageous to have children being separated from their parents. We are working to solve that problem, but when she had an opportunity, she did nothing, and now she's making it political.
Ms. Vukmir, you said that you do support a merit-based system, but does this not create a pay-to-play type of immigration if certain factors will disqualify people simply coming into this country? Does not Lady Liberty say, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free? Should people only be able to enter the country due to a merit-based system?
I think we will look at this and have a conversation about what the merit is. You're putting a price tag on it. I'm looking at what are people's skills and abilities, and that's totally different. I think we can have a compassionate legal immigration system, which I think that's what everyone wants. Right now, we have a broken, illegal immigration system that must be taken care of first. Everywhere I go across this state, people are tired of it. People want a legal process. And right now, people are taking advantage of our great country.
Your response.
Midge.
You want to follow up?
Well, I'll follow up with Ms. Baldwin. In an era in which there are serious concerns about the solvency of programs such as Medicaid and Medicare and food stamps, how should the U.S. weigh the needs of citizens versus those of immigrants?
Well, one is not to administratively alter what we have been doing for years, which is recognizing that we are a country of immigrants. We need to legislatively pass comprehensive immigration reforms. And I would say to that, having had the opportunity, as you noted, to vote yes on a bipartisan comprehensive immigration reform bill, that I'm focused on solutions and not just politics. And we have seen this president take aim at blocking immigration from certain countries. We have seen this president limit how asylum claims can be made, distinguishing domestic violence or being a victim of gang violence, and not allowing those individuals to make their asylum claims. And now we're seeing this. We've got to fix it legislatively. Let me give you one example. Our dairy industry relies on a lot of immigrant labor. But most agricultural visa programs are set up just for harvest and planting. Cows need to be milked 24/7, and we have to have answers for them too.
All right, we're going to move on now. The cultural movement known as Me Too recently marked its one-year anniversary. From Harvey Weinstein to Matt Lauer to the recent debate and hearings on Brett Kavanaugh, the Me Too conversation has spurred widespread national discussion. Given the underreporting of sexual abuse and sexual assault, what public policy should come out of the Me Too movement, and how would you, as a U.S. Senator over the next 6 years, lead the effort to improve the climate for reporting abuse in our schools, college campuses, and workplaces? This is a question for both of you. Let's start with you, Ms. Baldwin.
Thank you. I think one thing we have found is that too many victims, women, have held these painful attacks or assaults for years. We find this also male victims also. And what I think that the Me Too movement has done and said is that we need to speak our truths, we need to tell our stories, and we need to be heard. That means due process. That means due process on all sides. But it does mean that we have to create an environment and a country where it is okay for people to speak out and tell their truths. And I do want to say, especially to the young people who watched the hearing with Dr. Ford, I personally found her to be credible and compelling. I believe her. But despite the outcome, I don't want that to silence a whole new generation who I know are scared right now.
Just to follow up, Is there a public policy implication? Are there laws? Is there some guidance that a person in the U.S. Senate can provide?
Well, I certainly think that a more respectful proceeding in front of the Senate 2 weeks ago would have been helpful. There are a lot of policies, I think, out there. I forward or advance a bill to reverse the Supreme Court's Vance decision that made it harder for people to claim harassment or sexual harassment by their supervisors in a job. I think we should pass it.
All right, Ms. Vukmir, how would you as a U.S. Senator lead the effort to improve the climate for reporting abuse in schools, college campuses, and workplaces?
I believe the Me Too movement was hurt by the proceedings over the course of the last few weeks. And I kind of have to take a deep breath when I hear Senator Baldwin talk about due process, because I believe it was very important for Dr. Ford to make her statements. And I also believe in the due process of Judge Kavanaugh. But Senator Baldwin, 48 hours after President Trump announced that he was the pick, you came out and said you weren't going to vote for him. You didn't even meet with him. That is absolutely another example of how Senator Baldwin doesn't do her job. She has been missing from her job. She misses hearings. 60 to 80% of her hearings she misses. There were 100 hearings that on a committee that oversaw the Toma VA, and Senator Baldwin was not there when she could have intervened and made a difference. The Me Too movement is important, and it was cheapened by her actions and by the fact that she wouldn't even follow through on the due process of Judge Kavanaugh. These are important issues that must be covered, and both individuals should be given their time. And I believe something did happen to Dr. Ford, but there was nothing to corroborate and to link that to Judge Kavanaugh. And you didn't have the decency to even meet with the man.
Please hold your applause
just
and
to,
please hold your responses.
To follow up, if I may, the question, though, more broadly on the Me Too movement as a whole, are there things as a U.S. Senator that you would do to lead the effort to improve the climate for reporting sexual abuse, sexual assault, whether this involves a Supreme Court nominee or anyone?
Well, I certainly would have met with the Supreme Court nominee, because that's your job in the Senate. Advise and consent and confirmation. And beyond that, yes, we have to make sure that the process is continued, that you're allowed to have your day, to say your case, to allow the due process of the person who is accused. These other decisions should be left to employers. This shouldn't be federal law. These are things that should be left to local units of government, to employers. I don't want to add more federal law. We have to just ensure that due process is respected and allowed.
We'll leave it at that. We're now going to move to this segment of the debate, which is being called a candid conversation. There will be 4 minutes on the clock. You guys decide how you're going to split up the 4 minutes here, okay? But I am going to give you a topic to talk about among yourselves. Amazon just announced its new minimum wage across the country will be $15 an hour, after facing growing criticism for its pay disparity. The company has more than 4,000 employees in Wisconsin. What are the risks and rewards to creating a $15 national minimum? Whose role or responsibility is it, government or the private sector, to raise the minimum wage?
I'm excited. I'm really excited about the fact that Amazon is doing this, and they're doing it on their own. They're not doing it because it is a government mandate. It is, or because government is setting the wage. That's the wrong way to go about it. It is happening because of economic forces. And it's the economic forces that are taking place across this great country. And they're happening here in Wisconsin. The way we have turned our economy around in the state of Wisconsin, we had a 9.3% unemployment rate, and now we have a 2.8%. A $3.6 billion budget deficit 8 years ago, and now we have a surplus that we're giving back. what has happened at the federal level with the tax cuts that Tammy Baldwin couldn't support, the tax cuts for the people of this great state, $1,500 to $2,000 extra dollars in their pockets. This has spurred the economy, along with the regulatory reforms that the president and we here have done in Wisconsin. That's what allows an Amazon to say $15 an hour instead of government saying it. Senator Baldwin, you want government to create jobs. Government doesn't create jobs. Government creates the environment for the job creators to come in and do what Amazon's doing right now.
Leah Vukmir, I want to start with the tax proposal. The tax law gives 83% of its benefits to the top 1% of individuals and to big, often multinational corporations. It's going to cost $1.9 trillion. It is going to cause a huge hole in our nation's budget. It was supposed to trickle down. And yet we're not hearing Wisconsin workers are getting raises in their salaries or their wages. That's not happening, unfortunately. We have people working 1, 2, 3 jobs and still needing to seek nutritional support with food stamps. That's not right either. I am delighted by Amazon's example, but I do believe that we need to be role models in government, and we need to support a living wage.
Well, one way to be a role model is, Senator Baldwin, is to learn how to cut spending. So you talk about what the cost of this bill is. Well, we have to recognize that we have a spending problem. And so it's not just an issue of saying, oh, we have tax cuts, it's going to cost. We have to look within, and we have to look within our budgets, just like families all across the state do every day when they sit around their table. They expect government to do the same. And you haven't done that, Senator Baldwin. Under your watch, our debt has quadrupled, and you have voted for tax increases 413 times. How is that responsible in setting a good example?
First of all, tax expenditures cost money. And this will cost $1.9 trillion. And you have said you support cuts in Social Security and Medicare in order to fill that gap.
I've never said that, Senator Baldwin. I don't know where you're coming from, but just so you know,
one of your primary interviews,
Baldwin Care gets rid of Medicare. Just so you know, I want people to understand that Baldwin Care gets rid of Medicare. It gets rid of Medicaid. It gets rid of the Affordable Care Act, and we can agree on that. It gets rid of TRICARE, and it gets rid of private insurance.
We cannot agree because you are just misinformed.
No, you are wrong. You are wrong.
And I didn't mean to address Senator you directly.
Baldwin.
Leah Vukmir, unfortunately, thinks that
you didn't read the bill.
Expansion of Medicare will get rid of Medicare. But that aside,
Senator Baldwin,
look,
the bill.
Please.
Read the bill, Senator Baldwin. Maybe you didn't read the bill. The bill abolishes Medicare and goes to a full government-controlled health care plan.
Ms. Vukmir will go on to another topic. Hopefully we can find some balance. Recently asked all current U.S. senators and representatives what they are doing to ensure that men and women receive equal pay for equal work. Only 30% of Congress responded. Tell the voters why or why not you would support the Paycheck Fairness Act, a law that would include mandating companies report compensation data that breaks down sex, race, and national origin. Ms. Vukmir, you can start.
Well, let's ask Senator Baldwin right off the bat how she feels about this, because she pays her female staff 74 cents on the dollar. So much for equal pay from her perspective. Look, I don't believe that government should be going in and making decisions. People and women work for different reasons at different times in their life. So do men. And once we get into a situation where government is sitting and dictating, it goes right back to what Senator Baldwin talked about before with living wages and setting minimum wages. These are arbitrarily set. You know, I believe and trust that I can make a decision, or that an employer is going to make a decision on the qualities and the merits of individuals. And of course, I want people to have equal pay for the same jobs that they're doing. But when you have government coming in and setting it, this is problematic. But this is the big difference between Senator Baldwin and myself. Every problem Senator Baldwin looks at, she believes government has a better answer. I look at problems and I look at individuals and making decisions, employers. This is where decision making is best made from the ground up, not from the top down, as Senator Baldwin always imposes.
Ms. Vukmir, I want to follow up with you quickly. It is fact that women make 20% less than men on the dollar. My question is, do you support the Fair Paycheck Act that would make it clear that women get paid for the same job, the same amount?
Again, I think I have to look at the specifics of that bill. I haven't seen the specifics of that bill, so I'm not going to say yes or no on that. All I will respond to is the fact that, you know, there are various reasons why women are paid different amounts and they make different decisions in their life. Maybe they're only working part-time while they're having children. We have to look at it in the big picture, not as a one-size-fits-all. But women, if they are in the same job, yes, they should be compensated, but we also have to look at their experience.
Thank you. I appreciate your response. Ms. Baldwin, can you respond to the question? Do you need me to read it again?
No.
Okay.
I strongly support the Paycheck Fairness Act. And
Please.
prior to that, the Lilly Ledbetter Act, which was a first step, and this is a very important follow-up. But I'd also note, well, first of all, to correct an inaccurate statement on the part of Leah Vukmir, women in my office get equal pay for equal work.
That's not what our records show.
And secondly, I do want to point out that during her state legislative career, unfortunately, at the behest of the corporate interests involved with groups like ALEC, there was a repeal of an equal pay law here in the state of Wisconsin that she supported. So she would take us backwards. I think we need to step forward. Not only do women get paid less than their male counterparts, but also women of color have even bigger pay gaps that we have to pay attention to and fight to close.
Thank you, ladies.
All right. We have people watching this debate on television, listening on the radio, and following on Twitter. Our candidates will now have a chance to answer a question from Twitter. We have been streaming live using the hashtag on your screen. Again, you'll both have 90 seconds to respond. And this question is projected on the screen behind you. It's a question from Verita4546 for both Senator Baldwin and Leah Vukmir. What is your position on late-term abortions? We'll start with you, Ms. Baldwin.
I support a woman's right to choose. I don't believe that government should interfere with a woman's health or whether or when she should have a child. I also believe that my opponent has been at the very extreme of this issue. She has supported legislation that would ban in vitro fertilization, that would ban access to some forms of contraception, and would ban stem cell research that is providing life-saving treatments and ultimately potentially cures. So I strongly oppose any limitations like defunding Planned Parenthood, where so many women and men seek diagnostic care and primary health care. I believe that a woman should make her health care decisions.
I am 100% pro-life. I am a nurse. I can't even imagine not being pro-life. You want to talk about extreme, Senator Baldwin? Extreme is voting for a partial birth abortion. It is the most disgusting thing that can happen, that the arms and legs of a baby are pulled out of their mother. The brain is sucked out. That is vile. And you talk about a woman's right to choose. It's a woman's right to kill her baby. It's wrong. That is extreme, Senator Baldwin. I will never forget as a young nurse holding a 24-week-old baby in my hands in a neonatal intensive care unit. And I saw that tiny heart beating so rapidly under that thin chest wall, and that life was trying to hang on in that neonatal intensive care unit, and we were working hard to save its life. And Tammy Baldwin would rip that life out of a mother just like that and snuff that life out. It's wrong. It's wrong. And you voted for that, Senator Baldwin. That is your vote.
We will move on now to the next topic. We're going to talk about veterans. And this next question will go to Ms. Vukmir. In regards to Veterans Affairs, a sobering statistic is 20 veterans take their lives every day. Critics say a lack of access to mental health care and long wait times to get to services at the VA contribute to the disturbing trend. What changes do we need to see in veteran policy to make public and private partnerships easier in improving the overall health and well-being of our veterans?
Well, I'm obviously very concerned about Veterans Affairs. My son is a first lieutenant, soon to become a captain in the United States Army. And so I look at these issues very closely, and I've been traveling around the state speaking to a coalition of veterans who want more choices and options, and we need to be able to do that. And I'm glad that the administration in Washington is starting to look at that and give them more choices and options instead of arbitrarily set 40-mile radiuses and 30-day waiting periods. We need to give them more choices and options, which is not something that Senator Baldwin has wanted to do. When I think about veterans, I think about how she turned her back on the veterans at the Toma VA. It is absolutely disgraceful that for months she sat on a report that she and only she had that detailed the extent to which our veterans were being overprescribed opioids. I even have an ethics complaint from one of your own staff members that talked about how you tried to fire her and offered her hush money, taxpayer-funded hush money, to silence her. This is not somebody who stands and is accountable to veterans. And if Senator Baldwin cannot be accountable to our veterans, then she will not be accountable to any single one of us. It's wrong. I will always stand for our veterans. I have cared for them here in Wisconsin. I have cared for them as veterans. I have cared for them as Guard members. And you better believe when I go to Washington, I will have their back.
All right, Ms. Vukmir, I did not hear a response there, though, in terms of do you support public-private partnerships? What would those be to help veterans in the area of suicide?
Well, obviously, this is an issue that is very important because many of our veterans are dealing with PTSD. And I believe that our VA hospitals should be given the resources to do what they do best. And one of the things we know that they do best is PTSD, combat-related injuries, individuals who've lost their limbs. And I think this is one of the ways that we approach this problem of our VAs because we know that they do well in those areas, but some of the day-to-day problems that people have, primary care could be delivered closer to home by doctors outside of the system.
Ms. Baldwin, this question is for you.
If I want to challenge,
let me ask the question, and then I'm.
Okay.
Do you want to use your challenge for that, though?
Yes, unless you're going to ask me something
about that.
Okay.
Okay. Ms. Baldwin, you've been attacked in TV ads for your handling of a report exposing the overprescription of painkillers at the Toma VA Center back in 2014. The family of one of the veterans who died as a result of the overprescription of opioids from a doctor at the VA is supporting your campaign. But another whistleblower says it would be immoral to vote for you. How do you respond to the criticism? And what do you say to veterans who believe you did not do enough with the report when you received it?
Yeah. Well, first, I have to say that I think that Leah Vukmir should be ashamed of herself for using a Marine veteran's death for her own political gain. And when I learned about overprescribing across the VA system, but particularly at TOMA, I worked with that Marine veteran's family, his widow, his daughter, his parents, to enact Jason's Law. Jason's Law is a bipartisan product of a lot of hard work and collaboration with the VFW, with the DAV, with my Republican co-sponsor, Shelley Moore Capito. I dug in, and we have made a significant difference. Now, we do have an opioid epidemic in this country, and it's going to require a lot more work and determination. But to refer to a couple of other things that Leah Vukmir has said, there was an ethics complaint, and the bipartisan Senate Ethics Committee dismissed it and said it was without merit. Secondly, on the previous question, Leah Vukmir sadly has voted against mental health parity and mental health services at the behest of insurance companies for far too long in her legislative career.
All right.
Thank you, Ms. Baldwin.
We're going to have to move on now to tariffs. Ms. Baldwin, the U.S., Canada, and Mexico signed a new trade agreement last week that would replace NAFTA. You have introduced legislation aimed at protecting and helping American manufacturers in the past. Does this trade bill from the president accomplish that?
Well, I certainly think what I have seen of the new U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement is a step in a positive direction. One of the things I agree with President Trump on is the need to renegotiate NAFTA, which unfortunately resulted in too many, particularly Wisconsin manufacturing jobs, leave this country. But I will tell you right now, our dairy community is in crisis. Our manufacturing sector needs additional help, and the Mexico steel and aluminum tariffs are causing a lot of those challenges. The president needs to focus on countries that cheat, not our trading allies like Mexico and Canada. And when we lost over 500 dairy farms, mostly small and medium, last year, 6% of our dairy industry, this only makes it worse. We're on a pace to outdo that, and that would be a sad day. So there are many other things we can do to expand export markets, to support our dairy industry and our whole agricultural industry, and do right by manufacturing, because Wisconsin makes things. I think passage of my Buy America legislation in all of its facets, including the provision we're going to pass next week in the United States Senate, is a big step in the right direction also.
Ms. Vukmir, one of the provisions of this agreement is designed to make it easier for Mexican workers to form and join labor unions. As a state senator, you voted for Act 10, which restricted collective bargaining rights. You supported right to work. So when you look at this provision in the president's trade bill, does that square with your thoughts for American workers?
I'm excited about what the president is doing. The president is following through on what he always said, and we've known that this president is a negotiator, The Art of the Deal. He wrote that book, and look what he has done. He has taken us from a situation where we had very unfair trade, and he believes in free trade, as do I, but he believes in fair trade. And we have had unfair trade practices going on for quite some time. And so he's already, against the critics, brought people together. No one thought that he would bring the EU to the table, and he did. No one thought that he would bring Mexico to the table, and he did. No one thought that he would bring Canada to the table, and he did. And now this bloc of countries has the ability to apply the pressure and to negotiate against the real bad actor in all of this, and that is China. China has been eating our lunch. We have a $375 billion trade deficit with China. They are forcing our companies to turn over their trade secrets it's in technology. It's wrong, and we finally have a president who's willing to stand up for it. So I'm going to trust him. I have to look at the specifics of the bill, but I believe that we are headed in the direction that is absolutely necessary for us to go in. And I've been talking to farmers all across the state. I've been talking to our manufacturers, and they have all said, look, we need access to more markets. Right now, we don't have fair deals. We want fair deals. And we're going to give him the benefit of the doubt and the time to negotiate those deals. But they all said they don't have a lot of time. So we will have to make sure that we're watching it. So we will always stand and advocate for them.
Let me follow up for just a second, because I know Charles's question referred specifically to Mexico and creating a climate that would allow Mexican workers to form and join labor unions. Just a simple yes or no, is that something that you would agree with?
Well, I think they're already making a difference. We're seeing the wages growing in Mexico through the negotiations that have already happened. So I'm willing to look at that. I think that right now what we're seeing is that the effects of his negotiating and the ability to take these countries and bring them together is giving our industries a better opportunity, a more fair shake, so that we finally can have the opportunity for fair and free trade.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Vukmir. This question is for the both of you, and it is actually from one of our viewers. You will have 90 seconds to respond to this question. This question comes from Suzanne in Fox Point. She says, gun violence is a complex issue needing more than one single solution. What are 3 things you believe would help reduce mass shootings and daily gun violence in our cities? 3 things you believe will reduce both mass shootings and daily gun violence in our cities. Ms. Vukmir, you have 90 seconds.
Yes, well, it is tragic what's been happening. And it's not just schools that are soft targets, but I think about hospitals and medical clinics. I think about newsrooms. I think about universities, and there are a variety of settings. And I'm a strong supporter of the Second Amendment, and I truly believe it is a Second Amendment because our founding fathers realized how important it is that people are able to protect themselves. And so I think we have to continue to reinforce people's ability to protect themselves. We need to give local units of government, schools, whatever facility is, the ability to make the decision for themselves that they think is best. And I think we have to look at the mental health side of issues. And one of the things that we could clearly do on the national level is the sharing of information. This is when we look at a lot of these episodes that have happened, these tragedies. What we have found is that there was a lapse of information. There wasn't reporting that was done on individuals who clearly were at risk. And so I'm open to very carefully crafted laws that will address that particular issue. And I know that there are people that are talking about it right now.
Awesome. Ms. Baldwin, what are the 3 things you believe would help reduce both mass shootings and daily gun violence in our cities?
I appreciate that question. First of all, I am a gun owner, and I'm a supporter of the Second Amendment. But I do believe that the Second Amendment is entirely consistent with some common sense safety measures. I believe we need comprehensive background checks in every instance of purchase, exchange. I believe that we should ban bump stocks at minimum, my goodness. And I believe that we have to go after straw purchases. Those are when perhaps a legal purchase of many guns takes place and then illegal resales occur. And that particularly helps us get at some of the gun violence that we see that doesn't get as much of the spotlight. But I keep asking, how many more parklands, how many more Newtowns, how many more Oak Creeks do we have to have as a society before we will stand up to the NRA and its corporate interests and say, let's go with common sense safety regulation? Unfortunately, my opponent, who's been endorsed by the NRA, doesn't seem to recognize that the NRA has fallen out of let's say, advocacy on behalf of its members, because most gun owners I know support comprehensive background checks. Most gun owners I know support banning bump stocks.
Thank you,
We have reached the end of the debate at this time, and so we are now going to move into the closing statements. And Mitch?
Each candidate now gets 90 seconds for a closing statement. Candidates drew numbers to determine the order before our debate began. Ms. Baldwin will go first.
Thank you. Well, I want to start by thanking the hosts, our moderators this evening, and the audience and the viewers. I have to say it is an enormous privilege to serve as your United States Senator. But I think what you saw tonight is the choice that you face this election. I'm on the side of Wisconsinites, working people, families, small businesses. What you heard from my opponent shows that she favors the big corporations, the insurance companies, rather than Wisconsinites. I support Buy America legislation and stand up to multinational corporations in order to advance them. I support the Fair Drug Pricing Act, which I wrote with John McCain, and stand up to the pharmaceutical manufacturers every day. I opposed repealing Glass-Steagall and opposed the revolving door between Wall Street and the Treasury Department and government. I stand up to Wall Street every day. Leah Vukmir supported a tax giveaway that gave 83% of its benefits to the top 1% and big corporations. Even one corporation, ExxonMobil, will make more in the first year than all Wisconsin individuals and families combined off this tax cut. I'm fighting for middle-class taxpayers.
Ms. Vukmir.
Well, thank you all very much for hosting this debate, and thank you all for being here. And the stark difference could not be more clear between Senator Baldwin and myself. It's very clear as you listen to the answers, and I have to chuckle as she talks about special interests. Senator Baldwin is sitting on $22 million in a war chest of money that she's received from special interests. But I've got to tell you, what I hear from the people of Wisconsin are looking for leaders who understand the day-to-day challenges facing families. I mentioned that I grew up in a Greek family. I taught my aunts and uncles how to speak English when they came to this country so they could assimilate and learn how to work in this great country. I worked my way through college, working second and third shift in an inner city emergency room. Later, when my children were young, I fought the education system. I wanted a better education. I worked hard for them. I know what it's like to try to make ends meet, and I know what it's like to think about whether I have enough money for my kids in college. Senator Baldwin doesn't understand these day-to-day challenges. She is far more comfortable with her friends in the Hamptons than she is at a Friday night fish fry here in Wisconsin. When a veteran died at the Toma VA, her only concern was her own job. That is a betrayal of Wisconsin values. As a nurse who's cared for my patients my entire career, I will take that same passion to Washington and represent you. I'm asking for your vote on November 6th.
Thank you. Thank you. I know it is not easy to do a live debate, but we thank you for your time and the privilege to hear both of your opinions on the issues.
And so we want to say again, thank you for the U.S. Senate debate, and thank you to UW Milwaukee for hosting tonight.
Now, of course, for our viewers at home, you can find a complete profile of all the candidates on our websites, tmj4.com, as well as wuwm.com. And remember, the general election is November 6th.
And whether you vote early or you vote on Election Day, don't forget to get out and vote. Enjoy the rest of this election season. Get out and vote, and have a great night.